Let's look at the basics of creating and working with instrument tracks. Now, there's several ways to create new tracks. We can go to the track menu on top and go add tracks, and it brings up this add tracks window. We're going to close it. We can also use the shortcut T, and that brings up the same window. And we can also use this little plus button here, brings up the same window. Or finally, we can right click in an empty space in the track column and go add tracks. So I'm going to call this my first instrument. And the type of track it's going to be is an instrument track, not an audio track. Those are the two main types. We also have automation and folders, but for now, it's going to be an instrument track. And I'm just going to create one of them, but we can create multiple if we want, and we can assign a specific color if we want, and I'm just going to leave that one, or we can auto color if we're assigning multiple tracks. Like, for example, I could dial that up to create maybe a dozen tracks, and then it would auto color all of them. But I'm going to just set this back down to 1 and leave this manual color, and that's fine for now. Now, for the input, it's using my default instrument that we set up in the last video. But if I click here, you'll see that there's the Impulse 61, which is also called default because of the way it was set. And we also have the QWERTY keyboard option that I showed you in the last video. So I'll leave it at default, which is the same as going to Impulse 61. So I have a choice here of creating a new instrument or connecting to an existing instrument. Since this is an empty session, it's going to have to be a new instrument. And if I go existing instrument, there'll be none to choose from here. But if I go new instrument, we can choose from a long list of instruments. So I'm going to choose Mai Tai, and that's one of the built-in PreSonus instruments, and we'll use that to start with. So I'm going to click OK, and we see it here in the list, and I can just drag this out. The name is a bit truncated. There we see the whole name. And that's just triggering a default sound. But if I drag this, we can see some additional fields. There's the input that it's assigned to, and I can switch it there if I need to. And there's the instrument that's called up. So first thing I want to do is choose a sound. Now, there are a couple of different ways of doing this. I can click here, and that brings up the instrument interface. And they all have slightly different layouts, but in general, there's going to be a patch list here. So maybe I want to go for a bass, and I can click one of these. And we can go through them and choose like that. So I'm going to close this for now by clicking this little X button, and we can live happily ever after and play our instrument. But let's say we want to change the sound. I can call that back up, but I can also use the browser here. So I'm going to hit F6, and you'll recall that jumps to the instrument browser. And here, I was looking before I started this video, so it's already in the right place. But here, we can get access to the individual presets within each instrument. So I'm going to my PreSonus instruments. We can jump up here and navigate with these hierarchies. But I'm going to do it from here. And I'm using Mai Tai. And now if I click the little disclosure triangle, it'll show all the presets. Maybe I want to use a bell sound. I can take something like this and just drag it over the track column. And I have a choice of whether I want to combine and layer the sounds, which I'm not going to look at for now. I'm just going to load it. So that'll replace the current sound. Maybe I want to try another one. I'm getting prompted with the same message, but I'll just leave it. So that's one way of loading presets. Now, okay, that's all good. Let's say I decide I want that bell sound, but I also want a bass sound. Let me go back to here and take one of these. And I'm going to drag this to an empty space in the track column. And it's created a new instrument for me. And if I click here, I get my bell sound. And again, I can resize this, and we'll see that this is now called Mai Tai 2, and that's called Mai Tai. And if we hit F3 to open the mixer, we'll see those are the two instruments. Now, I want to draw your attention to a preference setting that's affecting the behavior that we're experiencing here. I'm going to hit Command with the comma key, and then in Advanced, under Console, we have Instrument Track Monitoring follows Record. So if we select this and also instrument input follows selection, then any instrument that we select is automatically going to be monitor and record enabled, and all the other instrument tracks will be disabled. So that's a really useful preference to have. We're monitoring and ready to go. Now we're monitoring this and ready to go. Now let's look at ways of managing these tracks. Let's say I have a big session and I want to take some tracks offline to save some CPU power. I'm not using them. Maybe I want them there in case I need them. I can right click and I can go disable track, and it becomes grayed out. And play that one. but not that one. But it's there, ready and waiting. I can always right-click and go Enable Track. So that's a great way to save resources. Now, I'm going to hit F3 again to open the mixer and want to show you the behavior of what happens when we remove these tracks. Let's say I go here and go Remove Track. So it's removed it from here, but it still exists in my mixer. So here, I'm triggering Mai Tai, but this bass sound that's loaded into Mai Tai 2 exists, and I can reroute the output here if I want to. I can go to Mai Tai 2 and get the bass sound that's loaded in there. Now I'm going to create a new track, and now I'm going to go to an existing instrument. Maybe I'll call it bass, and I'll choose Mai Tai 2. So now I've routed to this bell sound, the bass sound. Now what I can optionally do is right click and go Remove Track and Instrument, and then it'll remove that and the instrument from the session so that it's no longer available. So important to understand this distinction in managing instruments between removing the track versus removing the track and the instrument. And there are times when you might want to do both. Maybe you want to leave the instrument available in case you need it down the road, but you're not going to be using it at the moment. You just remove the track. Or maybe you decide you just don't want it or need it in this particular song. You delete both. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo, and now we have them both here. And I'm going to end off this video by going here and going to Save As. I've told you a few videos ago, I'm going to save the song files that accompany each of these videos in case you want to look through. So here's the first one I'm going to save. I have my basic Studio 1.5 explained song that I created at the beginning. We haven't done anything yet, but I'm going to rename this one, and I'm going to call it Instrument Track Basics. And now we see the new name up there. We'll continue with more in the next video.